law's main purpose is to protect the Queen, according to the Canadian Encyclopedia, and is the symbolic representation of all Canadian citizens. The Canadian Constitution allows criminal law only to be made by the Parliament of Canada, meaning that most of Canada's big laws have national scope and apply to all provinces equally. Criminal law in Canada protects the interest of public safety and to maintain social order and peace that is similar to U.S. law. Canada's 10 provinces do not have the power to regulate criminal matters on their own, so they largely focus their energy on laws regarding the welfare of the public. If one breaks a law specific to one's province, a provincial law, they would be found guilty of a summary offense and fined because prison time is rare for provincial offenses. Canadian prisons are run jointly by the federal government and the provinces. Most severe criminal punishment in Canada is life in prison with the possibility of parole, and because the death penalty was banned in 1976. Law enforcement is up to each province and municipality, but in most urban areas, the Federal Royal Canadian Mounted Police are the main enforcement. Canadian civil law seeks to protect and regulate the relationship between businesses and individuals. Civil law is similar to U.S. law, involving property, contracts, negligence, and family law such as divorce and child custody. What is important to know is the deal with Quebec, one of the provinces of Canada. Quebec's legal and judicial system is based on the French Civil Code, while the rest of Canada uses common law. Quebec has a provincial charter of human rights, a Consumer Protection Act, and separate income, security, and family allowance systems. The Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act governs bankruptcies, consumer and commercial proposals, and cases of receivership. The Act, which is with its early stages beginning in 1869, evolved greatly with amendments including the exclusion of voluntary and involuntary bankruptcies, the creation of offices and anti-fraud protection measures, student loan and debt protection up until the 2000s. Owners can file only if the partnership is located in a common law jurisdiction. It does not apply to banks, insurance, trust, or loan companies because it's covered by a separate act. This concerns the operation of corporations in Canada, and it can be run federally or provincially with specific rules regarding the incorporation within their jurisdiction, and it is the corporation's choice whether to be run federally or provincially, with factors to consider such as scope of their company. Prior to the Canadian Confederation, which happened in 1867, companies were organized in many different ways, such as the Royal Charter, as was done for the Hudson Bay Company in 1670, through the Act of the Parliament of the United Kingdom, as for the Canada Company in 1825. The Confederation in 1867 gave provinces jurisdiction over incorporation of companies with provincial objects. This phrase has been controversial and the subject of many court cases throughout Canada's history, such as in Citizen Insurance Company versus Parsons in 1881, where it was held that the Parliament of Canada had authority to incorporate companies with objects of greater scope. In 1916, a case was held that provincial objects did not restrict a company's operations to the province of incorporation. So it was, as long as it was licensed or registered to operate in another jurisdiction, it would be allowed. Overall, business law has changed greatly and has been subject to interpretation by many judges. According to CIA World Factbook, Canada is a parliamentary democracy, a federation, and a constitutional monarchy because of its Commonwealth status, so Queen Elizabeth is the head of state. Their head of government is headed by Prime Minister Stephen Harper. That serves as part of their executive branch. There is also a legislative branch, bicameral parliament, and a judicial branch headed by Supreme Court of Canada, which includes 9 judges. This legal system follows common law everywhere except Quebec, where civil law based on the French Civil Code prevails. Nationally, there are many people and things that serve as heroes or symbolic symbols. Wayne Gretzky is one of the most popular and famous ice hockey players in history. Naheed Nenshi is the current mayor of Calgary, Alberta, who is the first Muslim mayor of a North American city, an innovator of urban planning, and in 2013 proclaimed a day of Trans Day of Visibility as an awareness day for the challenges that transgender and transsexual Calgarians face. Nenshi was ranked second most important person in Canada by Maclean's magazine 50 Top Canadians list of 2013.
According to a UK-sponsored webpage on global etiquette, most of Canada's population is Roman Catholic, with other significant percentage of the population following Protestantism, identifying as Muslim, and identifying as atheist. It is very hard to characterize Canada under one set of cultural norms because their immigration policy has been historically open. They are known as, quote, a nation where people are encouraged to retain their cultural identities, traditions, languages, and customs. Because of previous settlement by both the French and the United Kingdom, English and French are the preferred home languages of Canada. Regional lines are also very prominent in Canada, as there is a great deal of emphasis on the individual's responsibility to the community and a greater allegiance to their province or region, which sometimes overshadows that to the country. Based on our research of Canada's legal codes, the laws of Canada reflect its society rather than society reflecting the codes. This is mainly due to the fact that Canada's laws have had the ability to develop and change over time. For example, provinces are restricted from making certain types of laws, such as criminal law, but they still work very closely with the national government on a multitude of issues and are prominent in Canada's laws. It is also important to reintroduce the fact that the province of Quebec follows French civil code instead of traditional Canadian common law. This also shows how regions and provinces of Canada often overshadow the national government. The home languages of Canada has also had an influence on the government, as according to the same UK etiquette page, quote, all laws of the federal government are enacted in both English and French, and that federal government services are required to be available in both languages. The United Food and Commercial Workers released a detailed timeline depicting women's rights in Canada over time, and their fight is similar to that of women in the United States. Starting around 1820, women fought to vote, fought to gain prestigious jobs, such as Dr. Emily Stowe becoming the first Canadian woman to practice in Canada in 1876, and Clara Brett Martin being the first woman lawyer in Canada in 1897. As time progressed, once they finally got jobs, they protested for better working conditions and for more protection of legal rights, such as the abduction of women was only criminalized in Canada starting in 1909. World War I brought more jobs, and women slowly gained more and more rights, such as the right to take birth control, the right to divorce their husbands, and the right to participate in the Olympics. It continues on like this, with women slowly but surely gaining more rights and achieving more milestones, and now women can virtually hold any job, be elected to almost any office, and have theoretically gained all of their rights. The Canadian Museum of History reports that the issue of slavery in Canada has long been glossed over by historians and by Canadian society in general. This might be due to the fact that at the time of slavery, Canada was still settled by the French, and while slavery was very prominent in French colonies located in present-day America, in mainland Canada there were actually few slaves. This is because the economy of Canada did not favor slavery. The fur trade and farming were the main economic outputs of Canada, and the fur trade was controlled by a small group of professionals that relied on native fur trappers, and farms were usually small and family-run, so familiar labor was sufficient enough to keep the farms running. Plus, slaves were often too expensive for most people in Canada. In 1793, both Upper and Lower Canada passed laws abolishing slavery, and in 1833, the official abolition of slavery in the British Empire simply confirmed the existing status that had already prevailed for several years in Canada. The Parliament of Canada reports that Canada has traditionally been engaged by its economic, military, and diplomatic assistance in the past, as they have sent troops to Afghanistan, Haiti, Libya, and the Horn of Africa. Canada is also in the UN, but in modern day times, they have not been very active in peacekeeping missions. In an economical point of view, Canada is, quote, a world leader in mining, a significant agricultural producer in a world facing food insecurity, and a leading exporter of energy in a world thirsting for secure energy supplies. The Library of Parliament of Canada has released a report on the issues they face today, and they're not really any huge major issues, but they're ones that any modern developed country at this time would typically face. For example, there's issues about how much of the government budget to spend on the current infrastructure deficit, and the Canadian population is aging due to increased life expectancy and lower fertility rates, and this is expected to put a financial burden on public pensions, healthcare, and caregiving. So there's debate about what to do with existing programs that benefit low-income seniors. Those are just a few examples of current political issues in Canada.
A modern controversy that is prevalent in Canada's world today are the 1,200 cases of missing or murdered Aboriginal women and girls reported in Canada over the past 30 years. The hashtag on Twitter, #AmINext, has been used by Aboriginal Canadian women and their allies to demand answers. Many social media users are utilizing the hashtag and holding signs asking how many more missing and dead women it will take for the government to launch an official inquiry into the crisis. Hashtag #AmINext aims to raise both awareness and pressure Prime Minister Stephen Harper's government to take action. These are just some pictures that Mike.com has compiled, basically a bunch of Twitter users with pictures of #AmINext written on themselves.